When I unexpectedly won $2.5 million in the lottery, what should have been a time of joy turned sour as my parents immediately began pressuring me to hand over half the winnings to their beloved golden child, my sibling, claiming it was only fair, since they had always been the family favorite. They had no idea I had a very different plan in mind. Imagine walking into your own home, your parents standing there, and your mother, my own mother, is literally burning your lottery-winning check. My father, with a chillingly cold stare, said, "If you won't share, you won't get a penny." But the look on their faces when I burst out laughing? Priceless. I'm Mackenzie, I'm 34. Listen, growing up in our middle-class suburban home in Ohio? It was anything but a picture-perfect family sitcom. The moment my sister Brooke was born, when I was 6, it became painfully obvious who the favorite child was. Most parents at least tried to hide their preferences, right? Not mine. Brooke wanted dance lessons. They found the money, no questions asked. Me? I needed a graphing calculator for advanced math? I was working extra shifts at the local grocery store to pay for it. Her artwork? Adorned the walls, front and center. My academic achievements? Met with a casual, "That's nice, Mackenzie, but did you see what Brooke made today?" Don't get me wrong, my parents weren't monsters. They provided the basics, and sometimes, they'd show genuine interest. But the imbalance? It was constant. And it was undeniable. As we got older, that pattern just solidified. Brooke dropped out of college to find herself. And my parents? They bankrolled her through 3 different majors and 5 career changes. Meanwhile, I worked through school, maintained a scholarship, and still graduated drowning in student loan debt. By the time I hit my 30s, I'd built a decent life for myself. I had a steady job as a marketing coordinator for a healthcare company, a small but comfortable 1-bedroom apartment, and just enough savings to treat myself to dinner out or a weekend trip once in a while. I wasn't wealthy, not by a long shot. Those student loans still ate up a huge chunk of my budget, but I was proud of my independence. I really was. Then one Tuesday, everything changed. It started like any other day. I stopped for gas on my way home from work, literally mentally calculating how much I could afford to put in the tank until payday. While paying, I just impulsively added a lottery ticket. I rarely played, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, only when the jackpot made headlines. But something just compelled me that day. "You never know, right?" the cashier said, handing it to me with a smile. "Lightning has to strike somewhere," I replied, laughing, and just tucked the ticket into my wallet without another thought. That evening, I was just heating up leftover pasta, scrolling through social media, half watching TV. The lottery drawing came on, and suddenly, I remembered my ticket. I pulled it out, fully expecting the usual disappointment, maybe matching one number, if I was lucky. The first number matched. Okay. Then the second. By the third, I was sitting bolt upright, my heart starting to race. Fourth number matched. Fifth. When that final number matched, I literally stopped breathing. I checked and rechecked the numbers, convinced I was misreading something. But there it was. All 6 numbers. And according to the announcer, the jackpot was $2,500,000. I just sat there in stunned silence for nearly 30 minutes, staring alternately at the ticket and the TV. Eventually, I managed to snap a photo of it. Then, I put it in a Ziploc bag and tucked it into my copy of Pride and Prejudice on my bookshelf, the safest place I could think of in that moment. My hands were shaking. I called my best friend, Rachel. "You need to come over now," I managed to say, my voice a whisper. And I'm not joking or exaggerating. Rachel arrived 20 minutes later, looking utterly worried. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" she asked. Wordlessly, I just showed her the ticket and the numbers I'd scrawled down from the broadcast. "Holy shit," she whispered, her eyes wide. "Mackenzie, holy crap." My voice was small, almost a plea. "Is it real? Can you check the numbers again? I'm afraid I'm hallucinating." She pulled out her phone, looked up the winning numbers, comparing them to my ticket. A beat passed. Then, "It's real. Oh my God, it's real. You just won $2.5 million. That night was a blur of disbelief, elation, and honestly, a little fear. Rachel stayed over, and we talked until sunrise about all the possibilities. What this could mean for my life. For the first time, I could pay off my student loans. Entirely. I could buy a house, not just any house, but a beautiful home with a yard. I could invest. Travel. Donate to causes I deeply cared about. The very next morning, I called in sick to work and contacted the State Lottery Commission. They confirmed I needed to come to their headquarters to verify the ticket and kick off the claim process. Rachel actually had to drive me. I was way too nervous to get behind the wheel. At the lottery office, officials verified my ticket and my identity. They patiently explained the whole process and laid out my options: a lump sum payment, less after taxes but immediately available, or annuity payments over several years. They even arranged for one of those ceremonial, big check, photo ops, though they made it clear the actual funds would be processed electronically through their financial department, and would take about 2 weeks. As I posed for photos with that oversized check, the reality finally, truly started to sink in. My life had changed forever, in an instant. But I had no idea then how it would test my relationships, and reveal truths about my family that I had always suspected, but never, ever wanted to confirm. With the initial verification done and those ceremonial photos taken, I went home with a folder full of paperwork, a copy of that novelty check for my records, and my head spinning with possibilities. The lottery officials had strongly advised keeping my windfall private until the funds were secure and I had proper financial and security measures in place. Winners often find themselves besieged by long-lost relatives, investment opportunities, and charity cases. The representative had warned me. Consider carefully who you tell, and when. I knew she was right. But I also felt this strange obligation to tell my family. Despite our complicated, often difficult relationship, they were still my parents. And despite the undeniable favoritism, Brooke was still my sister. And a part of me, a part I'm not proud of, also desperately wanted them to see that I had succeeded in this unexpected way. Maybe, just maybe, now they would finally see me. After a few days of deliberation, I decided to share my news during Sunday dinner at my parents' house. It was a monthly tradition I maintained more out of duty than actual enjoyment. I arrived early, helping my mother prepare the meal, mentally rehearsing how I'd break the news. "You seem different today," my mom observed, eyeing me as she chopped vegetables. "Did something happen at work?" "You could say something happened," I replied, unable to suppress a small smile. "But let's wait until everyone's here." My father joined us, asking about my apartment's persistent plumbing issues, problems I would soon be able to leave behind forever. When we finally sat down to eat, I took a deep breath. It was time. "I have some news," I began, my heart pounding. "Something pretty incredible happened last week. I won the lottery." My parents just stared at me in disbelief. "The lottery?" my father repeated, like, $20? "No," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "The state lottery. I matched all 6 numbers. It's $2.5 million. The silence that followed was profound. Then, both my parents erupted in exclamations of shock and congratulations. My mother actually got up to hug me, something that rarely happened in our family. "Oh my goodness, Mackenzie, this is unbelievable!" she exclaimed. "Wait until Brooke hears this." And there it was. Not even a full minute of celebration before my sister was mentioned. As if on cue, the front door opened and Brooke swept in, fashionably late as usual. "Sorry I'm late, traffic was awful. What did I miss?" My mother practically tripped over herself rushing to deliver the news. "Mackenzie won the lottery! $2.5 million! Brooke's expression shifted rapidly, from surprise to excitement, and then, to something far more calculating. She hugged me with unusual enthusiasm. "That's amazing, Mac! We're going to have so much fun with this." I felt a knot forming in my stomach at her immediate use of "we." Before I could even respond, my father chimed in. "This is perfect timing, actually, Brooke. Tell your sister about your situation." Brooke, to her credit, at least had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "It's not a big deal, really. I'm just in a bit of a financial bind with the business." The business was her latest venture, an online boutique selling overpriced bohemian clothing she'd started 6 months ago after abandoning her job at a marketing firm. I'd already heard from my parents that it was a disaster. "It's more than a bit of a bind," my father corrected her. "The credit card debt alone is nearly $30,000, and then there's the inventory loan." "Dad, please!" Brooke interrupted, shooting him an annoyed look before turning back to me with a practiced, saccharine smile. But hey, that's not important right now. This is about your amazing news. Though I mean, if you were thinking about helping family, I wouldn't say no. I sat there, my food forgotten, just trying to process what was happening. Not a single question about how I felt about winning. No inquiries about my plans or my dreams. Just an immediate, seamless pivot to how my windfall could solve Brooke's problems. I haven't even received the money yet, I said carefully. There's a whole process, and I need to speak with financial advisors about the best way to, but you will help your sister, of course. My mother interjected, as if it were already decided. Family helps family, Mackenzie. And with so much money, you can easily spare enough to clear Brooke's debts and give her business a proper chance. The knot in my stomach tightened, a familiar squeeze. I haven't made any decisions yet. This just happened, and I'm still processing everything. What's there to process? My father asked, his tone shifting from celebratory to something much harder. Your sister needs help, and now you can provide it. That's what family does. What about my student loans? I countered, my voice rising. Or the fact that I've been living paycheck to paycheck while trying to build some kind of security for myself? Don't I deserve to take care of my needs first? Don't be selfish, Mackenzie, my mother said, her voice taking on that disappointed, guilt-tripping tone I knew all too well. Your sister has a real business with real potential. This could be her big break. And what about my big break? I asked, feeling a lifetime of resentment bubbling to the surface. For once in my life, something amazing has happened to me, and immediately it becomes about Brooke. Brooke's expression turned hurt, a masterclass in victimhood. I can't believe you're being like this. If I won, I would share with you without hesitation. The hypocrisy of that statement was so absurd it was almost laughable. Just 3 years ago, Brooke had received a $10,000 inheritance from our grandmother. She'd spent all of it on a luxury vacation to Bali, without so much as offering to take any of us to dinner. The rest of the meal devolved into this tense, miserable conversation, with my parents alternating between aggressive guilt trips and thinly veiled demands. By the time I left, the joy of my windfall had been completely, utterly tarnished. Instead of celebrating with my family, I drove home fighting back tears of sheer frustration and bitter disappointment. Once home, I poured myself a glass of wine and called Rachel. That bad? She asked, the moment I finished recounting the dinner disaster. They didn't even wait 5 minutes before making it about Brooke, I said, my voice breaking. Not a single question about what this means for me, or what I might want to do with my own money. I'm not surprised, but I'm still sorry, Mac, Rachel replied gently. So, what are you going to do? I took a deep breath. Exactly what I planned before dinner, pay off my debts, secure my future, and make smart decisions. And apparently, I added, a new resolve hardening my voice, set some very firm boundaries with my family. Little did I know how severely those boundaries would be tested in the coming days. The morning after that disastrous family dinner, my phone started ringing at 7:30 a.m. It was my mother. I've been thinking about our conversation last night, she began, without so much as a good morning. I think you were just overwhelmed, which is understandable. But now that you've had time to sleep on it, I'm sure you see how important it is to help your sister. I pinched the bridge of my nose, already feeling a headache forming. Mom, it's not even 8, and I'm getting ready for work. Can we talk about this later? What's there to talk about? She shot back. This is what family does, Mackenzie. Your father and I have always taught you girls to support each other. The irony of that statement was absolutely not lost on me. I need to go. We'll discuss this another time. Before she could respond, I ended the call and silenced my phone. I just needed space, to think clearly, without the constant pressure. At work, I met with my supervisor and vaguely mentioned I might need some personal time in the coming weeks for a family situation. I wasn't ready to disclose my win, especially since the funds hadn't transferred yet. During my lunch break, I checked my phone, 3 missed calls from my mother, 2 from my father, and a text from Brooke. Hey sis, just wanted to say I totally understand you needing time to process everything. No pressure, but when you're ready to talk, I have some spreadsheets showing exactly how much I need to clear my debts and get the business profitable. Love you, Redheart. I closed the message without responding. That afternoon, I contacted a financial advisor recommended by the Lottery Commission, someone experienced in working with sudden wealth situations. We scheduled an appointment for the very next day. That evening, the calls continued. My father's voicemail was particularly pointed. "Mackenzie, your mother is very upset by your behavior. We raised you better than this. Call us back immediately so we can discuss how you're going to help your sister." I didn't return the calls. Instead, I spent the evening researching financial planning for lottery winners, making notes of questions to ask during my appointment. The next morning, my financial advisor, Miss Thornton, walked me through the realities of my winnings. After taxes, that lump sum would be closer to $1,400,000. Still life-changing, yes, but not the full $2,500,000 advertised. The first priority should be establishing an emergency fund and paying off high-interest debts, she advised. Then we can discuss diversified investments for long-term growth and security. When I mentioned my family's expectations, she frowned. Unfortunately, this is very common with lottery winners. I always advise my clients to establish clear boundaries early. Any gifts to family should be carefully considered and formally documented to avoid ongoing expectations. I left her office with a preliminary financial plan and a stronger, hardened resolve to protect my newfound security. But my family? They weren't making it easy. That very evening, I received a group text from my mother, including both my father and Brooke. "We're all getting together tomorrow evening at 7 to discuss the family financial plan now that Mackenzie has come into this blessing. Mackenzie, please bring whatever paperwork you have so far so we can understand the timeline." I stared at the message in utter disbelief. The audacity. Scheduling a family financial plan meeting without even consulting me was staggering. I replied simply, "I won't be attending. My financial decisions are my own to make." The response was immediate and heated. My father called, and when I didn't answer, he left a voicemail. "Your behavior is completely unacceptable, Mackenzie. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By turning your back on your own sister when she needs help? I'm extremely disappointed in you." The barrage continued through the next day. Brooke tried a different approach, sending a long, emotional text about how her business was her dream, and how with just a small portion of my winnings, she could make it successful and pay me back someday. Meanwhile, I returned to the lottery commission to finalize my decision to take the lump sum payment. I participated in another official, big check, ceremony for their press materials, holding that oversized novelty check while cameras flashed. The lottery officials again reminded me that the actual funds would be processed within 2 weeks. After the ceremony, I made a detour. I stopped by a secure post office box I'd rented and deposited the ceremonial check there, along with copies of all my lottery documentation. The originals? Those went into a safe deposit box at my bank. I was taking absolutely no chances with these incredibly important papers. When I arrived home that evening, I found my parents and Brooke sitting in their car, right outside my apartment building. My stomach dropped. I parked and reluctantly approached them. "We need to talk," my father said firmly, his eyes hard. "Since you wouldn't come to us, we've come to you." I glanced around the parking lot, painfully aware that this was not a conversation I wanted to have in public. "Fine," I said, my voice flat. "But I have nothing new to say." Once inside my small apartment, the tension was palpable. My mother immediately began examining the space with thinly veiled disapproval, while my father positioned himself commandingly in the center of my living room. Brooke perched on the edge of my couch, looking uncomfortable but determined. "This has gone on long enough," my father began. "You've had time to process your good fortune, and now it's time to discuss how this will benefit the family. Specifically," my mother added, her eyes fixed on me, "how much you'll be giving to Brooke to clear her debts and properly fund her business." I took a deep breath. "I've thought about this a lot, and I've decided that I need to secure my own future first. I have student loans to pay off, retirement to plan for, and student loans?" My father interrupted, incredulously. "You're going to be a millionaire. Who cares about student loans?" "I do," I replied firmly. "I've worked hard to stay afloat with those payments for years. And the money isn't as much as you think after taxes. But still plenty to help your sister," my mother insisted. Brooke leaned forward. "Mac, I only need about $80,000 to clear everything and have a proper marketing budget. That's nothing compared to what you're getting." $80,000 is not nothing," I countered. "And what happens when that runs out? Will you need another infusion of cash in 6 months?" "That won't happen," Brooke insisted, though her eyes slid away from mine. This is different. I just need a proper chance. Like the proper chance you had with graphic design? Or interior decorating? Or becoming a yoga instructor? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Each time Mom and Dad supported you financially, and each time you abandoned it when it got difficult. That's enough, Mackenzie, my father said sharply. Your sister is trying to build something of her own. All she needs is adequate capital, which you now have in abundance. This is about family responsibility. Where was this family responsibility when I was working 2 jobs to pay for college? I asked, years of resentment finally spilling over. Where was it when I needed help with the down payment for a car so I could get to work? You've always had different standards for Brooke and me. That's not true, my mother protested weakly. It is true, and we all know it, I said, my voice trembling slightly. For once in my life, something good has happened to me, and I deserve to enjoy it without guilt or manipulation. The argument continued for over an hour, growing increasingly heated. My parents cycled through guilt, anger, and even desperate attempts at negotiation. What about $40,000 instead? Brooke alternated between playing the victim and making veiled accusations about my character. Finally, emotionally exhausted, I just asked them to leave. I've made my decision. I won't be bullied or manipulated into changing my mind. My father's face hardened, turning stone cold. If this is your attitude, don't expect to remain part of this family. The words hit me like a physical blow. But I stood my ground. If your acceptance is conditional on me giving away my financial security, then maybe that's for the best. After they left, I collapsed onto my couch, emotionally drained, but oddly relieved. I had finally stood up for myself after decades of accepting second-place status in my own family. But I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I called Rachel and asked if I could stay at her place for a few days. I need some space from my family, and I don't trust them not to show up again. Of course, she said immediately. Pack a bag and come over. Wine will be waiting. As I packed enough clothes for a few days, I had no idea how prophetic my distrust would prove to be. I spent 3 relatively peaceful days at Rachel's apartment, going to work as usual, but returning to her place instead of my own. My family continued their campaign of calls and texts, but I responded minimally, usually with simple variations of, "My decision is final." On the 4th day, I realized I needed to retrieve some work documents I'd left at my apartment. Rachel offered to go with me, but she had an important meeting she couldn't miss. I'll be fine, I assured her. I'll grab what I need and be out in 10 minutes. I chose my lunch break, thinking my family would be at work or otherwise occupied. As I approached my apartment door, everything seemed normal. I unlocked it and stepped inside, immediately sensing something was wrong. There were voices coming from my living room. I froze, my heart pounding. Then I recognized them, my parents' voices. They were in my apartment. For a moment, I considered backing out quietly and calling the police. But anger, hot and righteous, overrode caution. I strode into the living room. "What are you doing in my apartment?" I demanded. My mother and father were standing by my coffee table. Between them, in a small metal trash can I recognized from my own kitchen, flames were rising from what looked like paper. With a jolt of horror, a sickening realization hit me. My mother was burning what appeared to be my lottery check. My father turned to me, his expression cold and utterly determined. "If you won't share, you won't get a penny." I rushed forward, but the damage was already done. The paper was mostly ash now, flames consuming what little remained. My mother stepped back, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. "Now we can discuss a fair arrangement," she said. "You'll need to reapply for the prize." I stared at them in shock, my mind racing to process what had just happened. How had they gotten in? What exactly had they burned? And most importantly, did they really think this would work? "How did you get into my apartment?" I managed to ask, my voice surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "We still had the spare key you gave us last year when you had the flu," my father replied matter-of-factly. "You never asked for it back." The violation of my space. The calculated, brazen nature of their actions. It was almost too much to comprehend. And yet, as the initial shock began to fade, something utterly unexpected happened. I started to laugh. It began as a small chuckle, and then, it quickly escalated into full-blown laughter. My parents exchanged confused glances, clearly unprepared for this reaction. What's so funny? My mother demanded, her voice tight. Do you think this is a joke? I struggled to compose myself, wiping tears from my eyes. Actually, yes. This is hilarious. You've lost your mind. My father said, his confidence wavering, just a fraction. No. I replied, my laughter finally subsiding, but a wide smile still plastered on my face. I finally found clarity. Do you really think that's the actual lottery check? Now, it was their turn to look confused. My mother glanced at the smoldering remains in the trash can. What do you mean? We saw the photos online from the lottery commission, you holding the check. That oversized check is a prop for photos. I explained, feeling a strange, powerful calm settle over me. It's not the actual payment method. No lottery commission hands out real checks for millions of dollars like that. Their expressions began to shift from confusion to dawning uncertainty. The actual payment is being processed electronically. I continued. What you just burned was a commemorative copy I received as a souvenir. It has no monetary value whatsoever. The color literally drained from my mother's face. My father, always quick to bluster when challenged, shook his head. You're lying. You're just saying that because we destroyed it. In response, I pulled out my phone and opened my email, turning the screen toward them to show a message from the Lottery Commission confirming my electronic funds transfer was being processed. The money will be deposited directly into an account I've set up specifically for this purpose. I said, my voice eerily calm. There was never a real check to burn. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents stood frozen, the reality of their utterly failed manipulation sinking in. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice small and suddenly conciliatory. Mackenzie, we were just trying to break into my apartment and destroy what you thought was my financial security. I finished for her, my voice laced with disbelief. Yes, I can see that. You're blowing this out of proportion. My father attempted, his authoritative tone trying to return. We're your parents. We were just trying to bring you to your senses by committing breaking and entering and attempted destruction of property. I shook my head, truly incredulous. Do you have any idea how unhinged that sounds? Just then, the front door opened, and Brooke walked in, carrying a takeout bag. She stopped short when she saw me. Oh. You're here. She looked nervously between me and our parents. I was just bringing lunch for Mom and Dad while they talked to you, while they trespassed in my apartment and tried to destroy what they thought was my lottery check. I corrected, watching her eyes widen. I didn't know they were going to do that. She protested quickly. They just said they were going to wait for you to come home so we could all talk again. Whether she was telling the truth or not didn't really matter anymore. The fact that any of them thought it was acceptable to enter my home without permission spoke volumes. All of you need to leave now. My voice was steady, calm, but there was no mistaking the absolute finality in it. Mackenzie, please. My mother began, her tone shifting to pleading. We made a mistake. We were just so worried about the family being torn apart over money. No. I countered, my gaze fixed on her. You were worried about losing access to money you believe you're entitled to. There's a difference. After everything we've done for you. My father started, his voice rising. That's exactly the problem. I interrupted, cutting him off cold. You've convinced yourselves you've done so much for me, when the reality is, I've been largely on my own since I was a teenager. You are not entitled to my lottery winnings, and your actions today have shown me exactly who you are. I moved to the door and held it open. Leave now, or I call the police and report breaking and entering. Your choice. They gathered their things in stunned silence. As Brooke passed me at the door, she paused. This isn't fair. You're being cruel. No, Brooke. I replied quietly, my voice surprisingly firm. Cruel is expecting someone to sacrifice their financial security for your endless series of failed ventures. Cruel is supporting parents who would break into your sister's apartment to destroy her property. You've always been the favorite, and you've used that to your advantage your entire life. That ends today. After they left, I immediately called a locksmith to change my locks and started researching security systems I could install. I also called Rachel to update her on what had happened. They did what? She exclaimed. That's insane. Are you okay? Strangely, yes, I replied, surveying my apartment. I think this needed to happen. The illusion is gone now. I see them clearly for who they are, And it's actually liberating. That night, I received a flurry of texts from extended family members, aunts, uncles, cousins, all expressing concern about the family rift and urging me to reconsider my harsh stance against my parents and sister. Clearly, my family had been busy spinning their version of events. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I focused on finishing my packing. I had already given notice at my apartment and found a short-term rental in a secure building across town. No one in my family knew the address, and I intended to keep it that way. As I sealed the last box, I felt a weight, a monumental weight, lifting from my shoulders. The money hadn't even hit my account yet, but I was already experiencing a different kind of wealth, the richness of clarity, and the pure luxury of finally prioritizing myself. The day after the burning incident, I took a personal day from work to handle several very important matters. First, I met with a lawyer recommended by my financial advisor, to discuss the legality of my family's actions and how to protect myself going forward. Breaking and entering is a criminal offense, the lawyer, Miss Patterson, explained. As is destruction of property, even if what they destroyed was ultimately just a souvenir. I don't necessarily want to press charges, I said, still conflicted despite everything. I just want them to leave me alone. A restraining order might be appropriate then, she suggested. And I'd recommend documenting everything, in case their behavior escalates further. Next, I visited the bank where I'd set up the account for my lottery winnings. The bank manager assured me that all security measures were in place, including requiring in-person identification for any transactions. We've worked with lottery winners before, she explained. Your account has our highest security protocols. No one can access it without your physical presence and multiple forms of ID. As a final precaution, I contacted the Lottery Commission to alert them to my family's behavior. Unfortunately, this happens more often than you'd think, the representative said sympathetically. Rest assured, we will not discuss your winnings with anyone but you, regardless of their claimed relationship. With these safeguards in place, I returned to my newly secured apartment to finish packing for my move the following day. As I sorted through my belongings, deciding what to take and what to donate, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? I answered cautiously. Mackenzie, it's Aunt Helen. My mother's sister. She'd always been somewhat of a neutral party in our family dynamics, either encouraging my parents' favoritism nor actively opposing it. Aunt Helen, I responded, my tone guarded. I assume you've heard some version of recent events. I've heard your mother's version, she confirmed. But I've known your mother my entire life, so I can read between the lines. What really happened? Something in her voice, a genuine concern, without judgment, prompted me to tell her everything. From the lottery win, to the breaking and entering, to the ceremonial check burning. When I finished, she was silent for a moment. They broke into your apartment and burned what they thought was your check? She finally asked, her voice a mixture of horror and disbelief. Yes, I confirmed. And they seemed to genuinely believe that would somehow force me to share the money with Brooke. Good Lord, she muttered. I knew your mother could be dramatic, but this is criminal behavior. The irony is, I explained, there was never an actual check to burn. The lottery doesn't work that way. The giant check from the ceremony is just for publicity photos. The real payment is processed electronically. Aunt Helen gave a short, incredulous laugh. So they committed a crime for absolutely nothing? Essentially, yes. Despite everything, I found myself smiling at the sheer absurdity of it all. The look on their faces when I explained that to them. I can imagine, she said, a hint of a smile in her voice too. Listen, Mackenzie, I'm sorry this happened to you, and I'm sorry that your win has been tainted by all this ugliness. You deserve to enjoy your good fortune without this drama. Her understanding was so unexpected, and truly, so touching. Thank you, Aunt Helen. That means a lot. For what it's worth, she added, your mother has been calling everyone in the family trying to rally support for her side. But after hearing what really happened, I think you'll find most of us are appalled by their behavior. After we hung up, I felt a small, but significant, measure of relief, knowing that at least some of my extended family understood the reality of the situation. The very next day, as professional movers loaded my belongings into their truck, my phone began ringing repeatedly. It was my parents. After the fifth call in 10 minutes, I finally answered. What do you want? I asked, my patience completely exhausted. We need to talk, my father said, his tone notably less commanding than usual. Your mother and I have been discussing things, and we realize we may have overreacted. Overreacted? I repeated incredulously. You broke into my apartment and tried to destroy what you thought was my financial security. That's not overreacting, that's criminal. We were upset. My mother chimed in from what must have been speakerphone. We weren't thinking clearly. But we're your parents, Mackenzie. Surely we can move past this misunderstanding. This wasn't a misunderstanding. I corrected her, my voice steely. A misunderstanding is when we miscommunicate about dinner plans. What you did was deliberate and calculated. The point is, my father interjected, we want to apologize and start fresh. Family is more important than money. I agree completely, I replied. Which is why I was so shocked that you were willing to destroy our relationship over money that isn't even yours. There was an uncomfortable silence before my mother spoke again. Brooke is very upset. She feels like you're punishing her for our actions. I sighed, watching as the movers carried out the last of my boxes. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting myself from people who have demonstrated they don't have my best interest at heart. So what now? My father asked, his voice almost pleading. You're just going to cut us off completely? For now, yes, I said firmly. I need time and space. I've arranged for my mail to be forwarded, and I'm moving today. Please don't try to contact me for a while. I'll reach out if I'm ready. You can't just disappear, my mother protested. We're your family. Family doesn't break into each other's homes and destroy their property. I reminded her. I have to go now. As I ended the call, a text came through from Brooke. I know you're angry, but you're being unfair. I had nothing to do with what Mom and Dad did. Call me when you stop being so selfish. The lack of self-awareness was staggering. I blocked her number without responding. That afternoon, as I was settling into my new apartment, a modern one-bedroom in a secure building with a 24-hour doorman, I received an email notification from my bank. The lottery funds had been deposited. It was official. I was now a millionaire. I sat on my new couch, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, and allowed myself a moment to truly feel the significance of this change in my life. Despite all the family drama, despite the betrayal and hurt, this was still an incredible blessing. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. All settled in? How's the new place? It's perfect, I replied. And the money just hit my account. Champagne time, she responded immediately. I'll be there in 30 minutes. We're celebrating properly this time. As I awaited Rachel's arrival, I reflected on how differently everything might have unfolded if my family had simply been happy for me. If they had respected my autonomy and my right to make my own financial decisions. If their love had truly been unconditional. But their actions had revealed important truths. Painful ones, yes, but necessary to acknowledge. And perhaps that clarity was its own kind of fortune. When Rachel arrived with champagne and takeout from my favorite restaurant, we toasted. Not just to my financial windfall, but to new beginnings and true friendship. To boundaries, Rachel said, raising her glass. And to seeing people clearly, I added, clinking my glass against hers. As we ate and talked about my plans for the future, I felt a deep sense of peace settling over me. The money would change my life in many ways, but the most valuable change had already occurred. I had finally recognized my own worth, and stood firm in protecting it. The weeks following my move were filled with a strange mix of exhilaration and adjustment. With Miss Thornton's guidance, I systematically addressed my financial priorities. First came my student loans, nearly $68,000 worth of debt that had shadowed me since graduation. Submitting that final payment brought an unexpected emotional release. I actually cried as I clicked the "Pay off remaining balance" button. Next, I established a robust emergency fund and set up diverse investment accounts designed for long-term growth. I purchased a modest but beautiful 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood with excellent security features. Nothing extravagant or flashy, just a solid, comfortable home that I owned outright, with no mortgage hanging over my head. "You're being remarkably sensible," Miss Thornton commented during one of our meetings. "Most clients in your position immediately buy luxury cars or take lavish vacations. I've waited too long for financial security to risk it now," I explained. "Though I did book a 2-week trip to New Zealand for next month," I added with a smile. "I'm not completely boring." At work, I gave my notice, explaining to my surprised supervisor that I had come into an unexpected inheritance. A small lie that seemed safer than announcing a lottery win. I agreed to stay on for 6 weeks to properly train my replacement and transition my projects. Through it all, I maintained my distance from my immediate family. They continued their attempts to contact me, sometimes apologetic, sometimes accusatory, but I held firm to my boundaries. I did, however, cautiously reconnect with a few extended family members who had reached out with genuine concern. Aunt Helen and I began meeting for coffee every other week. During one such meeting, she updated me on the family situation. "Your parents are telling everyone they're giving you space," she said with a knowing look. "But the reality is they're beside themselves that they can't find your new address. Have they shown any real remorse?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She shook her head. "They're convinced they were justified in trying to help you see reason. Your mother actually said they did it because they love you too much to let you make such a selfish mistake." I sighed. "And Brooke?" "Well, that's interesting," Aunt Helen said, leaning forward. "Her business has officially folded. Apparently, she took out some high-interest loans that she can't repay." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and was surprised to find I genuinely meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want my sister to suffer. "Don't be too sorry," Aunt Helen replied. "Your parents, they refinanced their house to bail her out again." "They what?" I was genuinely shocked. My parents were in their early 60s and had been planning to retire in the next few years. "That's their retirement security." "I know," Aunt Helen said grimly. "I tried to talk them out of it, but they insisted Brooke had no other options. She could get a job like everyone else," I pointed out. "That's what I said," Aunt Helen sighed. "But you know how they are with her. Always the exceptional child who deserves exceptional support." The conversation left me troubled. While I had maintained my boundaries, I didn't wish financial hardship on my parents. I decided to consult with Miss Thornton about potentially setting up a small retirement fund for them, not now, but perhaps in the future, when emotions had settled. Meanwhile, I was discovering the joy of financial freedom coupled with purpose. With Miss Thornton's help, I established a modest foundation focused on providing financial literacy education to young adults. I partnered with local community colleges to offer workshops on budgeting, understanding credit, and basic investing principles, all the knowledge I had struggled to acquire on my own. I also made anonymous donations to causes I deeply cared about, a shelter for domestic violence survivors, the public library that had been my sanctuary growing up, and a scholarship fund for first-generation college students. These acts of giving brought me more satisfaction than any luxury purchase could have. I wasn't just changing my own life. I was creating ripple effects that might change others' lives too. Rachel remained my steadfast supporter through all of these transitions. When I confessed my guilt about not helping Brooke, despite having the means to do so, she provided a valuable perspective. "Your sister doesn't need a bailout, Mac. She needs to learn consequences," Rachel pointed out. "If you step in now, you're just replacing your parents as her safety net. Nothing will change." "I know you're right," I sighed. "But I still feel this nagging guilt." "That's because you're a good person," Rachel said firmly. "But being a good person doesn't mean being a doormat. You can be generous without being exploited." About 3 months after the burning incident, I received an unexpected email from Brooke. Unlike her previous messages, this one seemed different, more reflective. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about everything that happened," she wrote. "I realize now how entitled I must have seemed about your lottery win. The truth is, I was desperate. My business was failing, and I was too proud to admit it. That doesn't excuse my behavior or Mom and Dad's, but I wanted you to know that I understand better now why you reacted the way you did. I miss my sister." I read the email several times, trying to gauge its sincerity. Was this a genuine moment of growth for Brooke, or just another manipulation tactic now that her financial situation had deteriorated? After careful consideration, I replied with a brief, but not unkind message. "Thank you for your email, Brooke. I appreciate your reflection on what happened. I'm still processing everything and need more time before considering any kind of reconciliation. I hope you're finding your way forward." Her response came quickly. "I understand. For what it's worth, I've finally taken a regular job, assistant manager at Riverside Cafe. It's not glamorous, but it's stable. Take all the time you need. I'll be here when/if you're ready."